So we have some bad sampling techniques. Oh, let me get this off the screen for you. There we go. So we need to go ahead and consider what's going on. When you think of students in the library asking them how much they sample, or only students in a stats class is not representative of the overall population of the college. If you think of today's poll in Fitness Magazine, they ask, have you ever hired a personal trainer? Well, 27% of the people said yes, which is not really representative of the overall population because people could respond if they wanted to but didn't have to. In other words, it's a voluntary sample and you don't want to trust the results from a voluntary sample. So we just talked about voluntary sample because you often get people that are strong opinionated one way or the other for voluntary samples that respond. The general population could care less either way, so they don't even bother voicing their opinion. Um, so an example of that would be emailing out something to the entire class or to the entire college and having people respond. Airlines often will go ahead and try to get customers to rate their satisfaction, and for the most part, it's only those that have a strong opinion one way or the other. So we have our population, we collect a sample, and sometimes there's sampling bias that could occur. Now, we go ahead and get our data from our sample, but there's also other forms of bias that can occur. So what are some of those other forms of bias that could occur? Well, some of those forms of bias could be the way that you are phrasing the question or the context in which you are asking the question or where it is you are collecting the data from. It could be inaccurate responses. Inaccurate responses would be, well, your best friend asked you how much you were drinking last night. You might get one response there. But if your pastor asks you how much you were drinking, or if your pastor asks you how many sexual partners you have had in the last year, you might not get an accurate response because people are affected by the interviewer. So let's talk about some question wording. Do you think the U.S. should allow public speeches against democracy? Do you think the U.S. should forbid public speeches against democracy? For the most part, they're trying to get at the same issue, the same fundamental question. However, the first one had responses of 21%. The second one had 39%. Quite a big difference in the results just based on the way the questions were phrased. So you need to be very careful on how you're phrasing your questions so that you're not trying to influence your results that you're getting. So should there be a tax cut or should money be used to fund new government programs? Here's the results from that. Second one, and very similar intent to what you're trying to get at, but because it was phrased differently, you got totally different results just by phrasing the question differently. When you think of context, if you're standing outside a Planned Parenthood center or in front of a Planned Parenthood sign and you ask this question, you're going to probably get totally different results than you would if you were holding a baby or had a picture of a cute little baby like this and then asked this question. So the context can also influence your results and be a bias. So here, 93% of the U.S. students said they were in the top half for their driving skills. However, to be in the top half, you can only have half or 50%. Obviously, we have some inaccurate responses here. Sometimes people overestimate their ability, or sometimes they don't actually remember exactly the correct response. If we were asking people um, how many times have they had to take aspirin or Advil within the last month, people don't necessarily know that off the top of their head, the exact number. So you always want to think careful about your data and how it was collected. And not all forms of collection, because of bias, lead to valid ways to make inferences about our population.